Hey again! This week's fundamental fantasy is being based upon a concept I'm blatantly stealing from Karis Nair on the RPG Design subreddit, which I'm probably actually mispronouncing. But it's something which is very fundamental to understanding about how you put together a game. He just had a really good way of describing it, so let's take a look at such. Basically, you have two main categories to work with here. A showroom is basically filled with all sorts of stuff on display. You can pick whatever you want from it, within the context of the rules of the game, but anything you want exists in the showroom as an object to inspect and purchase. A good example of this is D&D, where every single spell you can cast is listed individually, including many variants on the same idea. Summon 1, Summon 2, Summon 3. You get where this is going. Each one of these is listed individually and put on display. If it's not in the showroom, you can't use it because it's not in stock. The workshop concept is different in that instead of having every end result listed, you instead have the various pieces described and rules given for how to put them together in different ways. It's the difference between purchasing a model which is already completed and purchasing a box of Lego, essentially. An example of a spell system which is a workshop would be the hero system. Now, every game is going to have at least some aspect of both of these in play, but what you focus upon more heavily will significantly alter how your game plays in general. It's the difference between making your own stuff or using stuff pre-built for you. If it's pre-built, it tends to be better balanced, and the other parts of the game are better adapted to take such into consideration. Similar to a linear storyline versus an open world concept. The more you know about this story, the more foreshadowing and specific details to that story that you can drop in elsewhere, but the less choice players have. Except the story here is the story of mechanics. Saorsa itself uses a bit of a hybridized version of sorts, using different aspects of both depending on the situation. This is kind of true to some extent for all games, though usually not in such a dramatically notable manner as this. See, certain things are handled mostly as a showroom. The player species in Saorsa are essentially handled as a showroom with various options presented, and you pick the ones you like. Though this does still mean that the species itself is a workshop where you build your desired character from such. Skills are similar in nature, and again, skills are used as smaller pieces in a workshop for things like spells, for example. You build a spell from basic pieces and follow a set of guidelines and rules to do so in a coherent manner. But despite using both, it doesn't get away from the fact that it really does have to involve either listing out the end results possible to pick from, or pieces and rules on how to put those pieces together to form an end result. Such is the very nature of providing information in a coherent manner from you, the designer, to the player. You need to communicate this information between the two of you, and unfortunately, it's a one-way street most of the time. Players can't ask the designer for questions about how to interpret things most of the time, because the words, once written on the page, are fairly static in nature. As such, all of the information required to use a system must be presented clearly to the players in totality. This means there isn't a lot of choice to work with here. You absolutely must, at some point, describe what tools the players have to work with. There's no getting around this fact. As such, you will always have a list of what's available. The difference between these two mindsets comes down solely to whether you're listing the finalized forms or not. As in, are you describing the spells they can choose from, or are you listing the parts of a spell you have available to build a spell out of? No matter how many rules and open-ended concepts you offer, sooner or later you're going to be forced to create a list of specifics to be fed into those rules. It may not be presented as a list in terms of written format, but the effective usage will be a list of what's available. For example, let's say we state a simple rule for creating weapons for a game, where a piercing weapon deals 10 damage by default, and a slashing weapon deals 20 by default. And you can modify those using different properties. That's already a list. We just listed clearly 2 items on the list: the damage for piercing and slashing weapons. No matter what you do, your game really does have to involve either listing out the end results possible to pick from, or pieces and rules on how to put those pieces together to form an end result, or some combination of both methods. There's really no other way to get the information across. It's either pre-built, or you build it yourself from scratch, or it comes IKEA style. As such, you have to be able to accept that it's alright to list information off. I know, if you've ever done creative writing, they stress over and over and over that you should show me, don't tell me, and that a list is essentially a method of telling people something. But that's okay. Honest, it really is. Lists and telling people something is done to provide specific information in a concise manner. Sometimes showing people an idea is just flat out too clunky and unwieldy, having to beat around the bush and do anything other than flat out state what's obvious. So when you make a list, realize that it's essentially creating a showroom of what's available for use. Also realize that it's alright to do so. Even if you want to implement a workshop where players can piece things together on their own, they still need an inventory of base parts to work with, meaning you'll still have need of the showroom, even if you're only placing basic materials on display for use within the workshop. Yes, this is sort of reiterating the points that were already covered, but it's an important concept to understand when you're creating any game of any kind, but especially role-playing games, in that they tend to favor a workshop approach more than most other game types, and it's easy to lose sight of the fact that you require both used in tandem with one another. Anyway, this has been a fairly short episode because the concept's pretty simple, but it's important to understand how you're building your game, and which sections of it are static in nature and which are more flexible. When you use a workshop setting, it's going to be harder to build because you have to also include the rules which dictate how to use the pieces offered in its showroom. Sometimes it's best to give the players all the choice in the world to be able to customize their ideal character. Other times, it's actually better to present them with firmly rooted choices to pick from. In both cases, you'll note that there's a choice to be made, As has been stated in previous videos, choice is the point of contact between the player and the game. It's what makes a game, well, a game, more than anything else. Without choice, it's just a TV program with no true interaction. I trust we're clear on this matter now, so with that, I'm out. I'll see you next time.